Joining BYU Sports Nation on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline, as he always does on Matich Mondays, is ESPN college football expert, analyst, insider Trevor Matich. Trevor, what a weekend in college football. 9 different ranked teams lost. How would you sum up the madness of the sport over the weekend?
Chaos is beautiful. That's how I do it. I mean, you can just take a look at the biggest upset of the week is Ohio State losing at home to Michigan State, and it's bad for Buckeye fans. But it threw the playoff and the Big Ten completely onto its ear and opened up a lot of possibilities for other teams. I mean, Notre Dame now, the Big 12 champion, the Pac-12 champion, if Stanford wins with two losses, now all of a sudden have hope, whereas they might not have before. And so the chaos, while it's ugly for the teams that lose, is a beautiful thing because of all the wonderful possibilities that it opens up and all the great arguments that we can have about those possibilities.
If Notre Dame beats Stanford this week, will 2 Power 5 conferences be left out of the playoff, in your opinion?
That is very possible. It is very possible because Notre Dame, if it beats Stanford, will finish the season with 1 loss at Clemson. Clemson is the team that the committee has said all season, since they've started their rankings anyway for the last several weeks, is the best team in the country. And Notre Dame went out there with the freshman quarterback making his first road start in a monsoon and lost to Clemson by 2 points. That's their only loss. And if they're able to beat a Stanford team that has a lot of talent and a Heisman candidate in their running back Christian McCaffrey, then I think the committee will have every excuse to give them the benefit of the doubt to get them in. And that would mean that 2 Power 5 conference champions would be out of it. Now, you could see the Pac-12 being out because if Stanford had 2 losses, okay, you can kind of see that.
And it'd be free at that point.
If a 1-loss Big 12 champion is out, there's even more chaos that'll happen now because they will be left out for 2 years in a row.
Dial up Tom Homo.
BYU to the rescue.
Trevor, are weekends like this last weekend with the 9 ranked teams and all of that chaos good for college football, or does it set the sport back?
No, it's good for college football. It's very good. And, you know, even when it's ugly for some of the individual teams. Look at the SEC. There was chaos there, even though, you know, it wasn't always among ranked teams. Florida has already clinched the SEC East title. They'll be playing it for the conference championship. But they were taken to the mat by one of the worst teams in the FBS, Florida Atlantic. And that was not good for the SEC, but it was great for a conversation piece. South Carolina lost, I believe, to the Citadel. And that's bad for South Carolina and the SEC, but it's great for the Citadel. It's great for college football for the little guy to rise up like that. And when the ranked teams, the top 10 teams, the playoff contenders, when they lose, it takes it to a whole nother level. Because college football is based on emotion that's tied to tradition and to a deep passion for their team that's unlike anything else in any other sport that I've seen. And when that emotion can ride the roller coaster late in the season, then it's good for college football because the emotional connection is cemented even more. The attention is cemented even more. And the desperation for the final weeks of the season, based on what you need your team to do and what you need to happen to other teams around the country, becomes all the more massive in your mind. And it's that emotional connection that makes this kind of chaos so good for the sport.
Yeah, it's fun. This is essentially the round of 32. Next week, the round of 16, if you will, and then 16-8, and then the college football playoff. It'll be great. BYU played its last home game on Saturday, a big win over Fresno State. BYU hoped to win big, but what was your biggest takeaway from the game?
My biggest takeaway was how hard they fought instead of playing down to the level of the opponent. Fresno State's not very good, but BYU didn't do just enough to beat Fresno State. They went out there and dominated Fresno State. They played their game, and I think that's a testament to the maturity of the program and to the way the players respond to how they're being coached, because the players know that Fresno State wasn't very good coming in, and yet they still prepared in a way that allowed them to play the way they played, and that's players that are highly coachable, and that's one of the hallmarks of BYU's program.
The defense, just dominated on Saturday against Fresno State with the 5 sacks, 2 interceptions, a pick 6, led by Bronson Kafusi. When you look at Bronson, what do you think about what he has done individually over the last 2 weeks?
You know, he's just been a joy to watch. BYU fans have 2 more games to see him in a BYU uniform, Utah State and then the bowl game. And he's one of the greatest defenders ever to play for BYU. I mean, BYU fans have been spoiled in recent years by people like Kyle Van Noy and Ziggy Ansah. And it just seems like Bronson Kafusi is just another great defender that rolls in there. But the truth of it is, it's kind of unprecedented to have this many awesome defensive players light up college football right there with that Y on their helmet. And the fact that he's able to get in there and just dominate, not just with his physical size, I mean, he's a massive guy, but also to dominate with his technique. He's very nimble. He's very precise with the craft of the game and the techniques of pass rushing, I think, are what elevate him above other players that are just physically dominant.
When you look at BYU's receivers, too, and those group of 4 senior receivers, how have they performed this season, and what have they meant to this team, in your opinion, Trevor?
They've been critical, and I'm very proud of the way they've played. I mean, there have been times that they've had to carry the offense. The injury to Taysom Hill in the opener meant that a true freshman that was just a couple of months off of his mission in Tanner Mangum had to play quarterback. An offensive line that has a lot of young guys on it that had to shuffle guys in and out because of injury and suspension, et cetera, struggled. Running back, starting running back isn't playing this year, the guy they expected to start, and so you've had to shuffle in other guys at running back, and the receivers have been the bedrock. And it's kind of weird to call receivers the foundation stone of an offense, but those seniors, those experienced guys, did what we talked about all season long, which is beast the ball. I mean, their experience is such that they've been able to understand what it's like to get hit, what it's like to go over the middle, what it's like to fight for a football, not just wait for it to arrive where you are. And I think that experience means they're not afraid to do any of those things. And the fact that they did those things and carried this team at times when other parts of the offense wasn't functioning or weren't functioning at the level that you would hope they would function, the receivers were still able to beast the ball. They were still able to keep the team even with the chains and to make the big plays, not just at the end of games, but also during games to keep them in range at the end of some of the closer games. And those receivers, I think, are another group that BYU fans should really enjoy over the last couple of games, because when you've got guys like Mitch Matthews, Devin Blackman, Taron Houck, guys that as a group, it'll be, you may not see a bunch of seniors like that for a long time at that position. They have been as integral a part of the success of this team this year as any other position group.
BYU national champion, ESPN college football analyst Trevor Matich with us on a Matich Monday. This is BYU Sports Nation. BYU finishes the season 6-0 at home. They now hit Logan, Utah, with a chance to get to 9-3 this season, which by all means would be a fantastic season given everything that has happened to the Cougars. But the Aggies are undefeated at home. What do you think about BYU's matchup with Utah State the final week of the regular season?
Well, this is a losable game. Utah State could rise up and beat BYU like they did last year in Provo and knock Taysom Hill out for the season. I mean, BYU, I would imagine the players want to absolutely obliterate Utah State here. And going into the game with that much emotion would be a mistake. The week of practice is where they need that kind of emotion to really focus in and practice like this is the Rose Bowl, the Super Bowl, the college football playoff. But when you get to the game, in a rivalry game like this, too often you play with such emotion that your technique suffers. And to win a game like this, you've got to focus in on the next play as the universe. That this play is the universe. And then play that play the correct way with emotion behind it, and it'll be there. But let Utah State be the team that plays with too much emotion, gets a little sloppy, and just tries to beat up BYU on the field, while BYU is more precise and beats them up on the scoreboard.
So a rivalry game for BYU, and I like it. If you can't play Utah this week, might as well play Utah State in the final week of the regular season. They're a bunch in college football. What's one or two of them this coming weekend that you love?
I love Ohio State, Michigan, because it's turned out to be a little different from what we expected. I mean, it was going to be an Ohio State coronation into the playoff, and all of a sudden they lost to Michigan State on Saturday. And they're still alive for the Big Ten East championship, as is Michigan, depending on what Michigan State does in the final game against Penn State. But all of a sudden now, you've got a Michigan team that's wired tight and feeling good about themselves, facing an Ohio State team that all of a sudden looks like it's starting to fall apart. I mean, not only did they lose to Michigan State at home on Senior Day, but Ezekiel Elliott, their running back, called out the coaches for what he considered poor play calling. Their backup quarterback, Cardale Jones, tweeted out that he's leaving, he's not going to come back next year. And this is the week of their biggest rival, with the division championship still in play. And that kind of chaos within the program makes this game really, really interesting, because Michigan has no such chaos. All they want to do is wipe the floor with Ohio State. And the thing is, if Ohio State doesn't focus in, Michigan can do it, because for all the talent the Buckeyes have, they have never put it together this year. And this game seems like they're set up for their most dangerous outing yet.
A man who always brings us a fantastic interview, and a man who in his day could rival Remington Peck's throwing ability, Trevor Matich, with the BYU Sports Nation. Oh, hey.
I think Joe Montana ought to ask for Remington Peck's autograph. That was a fantastic throw.
Trevor, thanks for the time.
All right, guys.